The rain came down in relentless sheets, turning the bustling streets of New York into a watery labyrinth, where puddles reflected the city's frantic glow like shattered bars. Lily Harper dashed through the downpour, her thin coat doing little to ward off the chill that seeped into her bones, her sneakers splashing through the flooded sidewalks with a rhythmic slosh that echoed her racing heart. It was one of those sudden summer storms that caught the city off guard, transforming the concrete jungle into a slick, unforgiving maze. Lily had just finished her shift at the small bookstore in Greenwich Village, her arms laden with a bag of unsold novels she'd promised to drop at the library on her way home. The umbrella she'd grabbed from the lost and found stand in the shop was her only shield, its black canopy straining against the wind like a fragile wing. She didn't know whose it was, just a forgotten relic, plain and sturdy, with a handle that felt oddly heavy in her grip. But as the rain intensified, pounding against the fabric with a tattoo of urgency, she clung to it like a lifeline, her footsteps quickening toward the subway entrance. The wind howled, whipping her wet hair across her face, blinding her for a moment as she rounded the corner. The street was a river of umbrellas and hurrying figures, each person a blur in the deluge. Lily's bag slipped from her shoulder, its strap catching on the umbrella's spoke, and she stumbled, the books scattering into the gutter like drowned birds. She cursed under her breath, kneeling to gather them, the rain soaking through her knees, her fingers numb and fumbling. The umbrella teetered, threatening to fly away, and she reached for it just as a hand, strong, steady, caught the handle, holding it firm. "Allow me," a voice said, deep and resonant, cutting through the storm's roar like a command the wind obeyed. Lily looked up, her breath catching. The man was tall, his dark overcoat repelling the rain as if it dared not touch him, his face chiseled with lines that spoke of authority and hidden depths. His eyes were dark, almost black, piercing through the gloom with a gaze that seemed to see not just her, but through her. His hair was cropped short, silver threading in the sides, and a faint scar curved along his jaw, adding to the aura of danger that clung to him like the rain to her skin. "Thank you," Lily murmured, her voice barely audible over the downpour. She stood clutching her wet books, her cheeks flushing, not just from the cold, but from the intensity of his presence. He held the umbrella over her, his arms steady, creating a small pocket of dryness in the chaos. "You're welcome," he replied, his tone smooth, accented with a hint of Italian that made each word roll like distant thunder. "But this umbrella, it's mine. I left it at the bookstore earlier today." Lily's heart skipped, her fingers tightening on the handle. "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was lost. Here." She tried to hand it back, but he shook his head, his smile faint, shadowed, carrying a weight she couldn't place. "Keep it for now," he said, his voice low, resonant. "You need it more than I do. Just return it when the rain stops." The building across the street, Russo Towers, 40th floor. Ask for Victor Russo. Lily's breath caught. Russo Towers, the gleaming skyscraper that dominated the skyline, a symbol of power and mystery. "You own it?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly, not just from the cold. His smile deepened, a glint in his eyes. "Something like that." He stepped back, the rain immediately claiming him, but he didn't seem to mind. "Stay dry, Lily." He turned and walked away, his silhouette cutting through the storm like a blade through water. Lily stood frozen, the umbrella heavy in her hand, her heart pounding. How did he know her name? She hadn't said it. The rain pounded harder, but she barely felt it, her mind reeling. The umbrella felt different now, not just a shield from the storm, but a key to something dangerous, something that called to her even as it warned her away. The next day, the bookstore felt different. The shelves of dusty tomes and the scent of aged paper, a familiar comfort that now seemed tinged with mystery. Lily's shift dragged, her mind on the umbrella leaning against her locker, its handle still warm from his touch in her memory. Customers came and went, their voices a murmur, but her eyes kept drifting to the window, to Russo Towers across the street, its glass facade gleaming under the sun that had chased away the storm. The building was a behemoth, its lobby a marble palace she'd never dared enter. But the umbrella was a bridge, a connection she couldn't ignore. By evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of fire, Lily grabbed the umbrella and crossed the street, her heels clicking on the pavement, her heart pounding with a mix of nervousness and curiosity. The lobby was opulent, chandeliers casting diamond light, security nodding as she approached the desk. "I'm here to return this to Mr. Russo," she said, holding up the umbrella, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded, picking up the phone. "Mr. Russo, a Miss Lily here to see you." A pause, then she hung up. "40th floor. He's expecting you." The elevator ride was smooth, the hum a soothing contrast to her racing thoughts. The doors opened to a penthouse suite, all glass and minimalism, the city sprawling below like a conquered kingdom. Victor stood by the window, his back to her, his silhouette sharp against the sunset. He turned, his dark eyes locking on hers, his smile faint but genuine. "You came," he said, his voice low, resonant. "I had to return this," she said, holding out the umbrella, her voice trembling slightly. He took it, his fingers brushing hers, sending a spark through her skin. "Thank you, but I hoped you'd come for more than that." Sophia's breath caught. "What do you mean?" He set the umbrella aside, stepping closer. "Coffee, or perhaps dinner. The view's better from here." She hesitated, the city's lights twinkling below, a sea of possibilities. "Dinner," she said, her voice steady, her heart leaping. Their nights began, dinners at hidden spots, conversations that peeled back his layers, his guarded truths unfolding like the folds of an umbrella. One stormy evening, he leaned close. "You're the only real thing in my world, Sophia." Her breath caught. "Even with all your power?" "Power's an illusion," he murmured. "You're not." Their first kiss was fire in the storm, his lips desperate yet tender, sealing a bond she couldn't break. But shadows followed. A note slipped under her door. "Stay away from Russo." Her pulse raced. She showed it to Victor, his face darkening. "Enemies," he said. "They see you with me." "What do we do?" she asked, fear tightening her chest. "We fight," he said, his hand in hers. "Together." The note was a spark, igniting a war she hadn't chosen. But with Victor's hand in hers, Sophia knew she couldn't turn back. Not from him, not from the fire he'd kindled. The city's shadows deepened, their battle just beginning. Approximately 30,000 characters with expanded narrative. The city's pulse thrummed beneath a sky choked with clouds, its neon veins flickering through the diner's fogged windows like a faltering heartbeat. Sophia Grant stood behind the counter, her hands trembling as she polished a glass, the memory of Victor's words. "We end this. Together." Clinging to her like a fragile vow, the factory's blood-soaked floor, Marco's lifeless eyes, and the crumpled note. "You can't hide forever." The vault, or her life, haunted her, their shadows lingering despite Victor's promise of a final stand. The diner's familiar hum, clinking plates, the hiss of the coffee machine, the buzz of the neon sign felt hollow, a thin shield against the storm brewing in her heart. Sophie's silence was a wound now, her roommate's absence a betrayal that left Sophia alone with Luna's soft purrs and the weight of Victor's world. The city whispered of his victory. Russo took out Marco, but Sophia's gut twisted with doubt. The quiet was too perfect, too fragile, like the calm before a lightning strike. Her fingers brushed the note in her pocket, its sharp edges a reminder of the noose tightening around them both. Victor hadn't returned since the factory, his absence a void that gnawed at her. His last text, "Stay at the diner, I'm setting the trap," was a lifeline, but its brevity chilled her. The USB drive, now hidden in a safe house only Victor and Elena knew, was a ticking bomb, its secrets, names, deals, crimes, enough to bury Victor's empire and them with it. Elena, Victor's sister, had stayed close, her haunted eyes a mirror of his, her presence a reminder of the past he'd kept locked away. The diner's customers whispered, their voices sharp with fear and awe. "The syndicate's circling. Russo's girl is marked." Their gazes followed her, heavy with judgment, and the weight of their stares was suffocating. Sophia's life was no longer her own. She was tethered to Victor, to his world of blood and shadows, and the thought of losing him was a pain sharper than any blade. The clock ticked toward closing, each second a pulse of dread. The diner emptied, the last customer's murmurs fading into the rain's soft patter against the windows. Sophia's hands shook as she locked the front door, her eyes scanning the street for Victor or the syndicate's men. The neon sign buzzed, its light fractured in the rain, casting jagged shadows that seemed to move. She was reaching for her coat when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Pier 17, midnight. Come alone. Her heart stopped, the words echoing the factory's threat. She should call Victor, should stay safe as he'd begged, but the thought of him walking into another trap was unbearable. She dialed his number, but it went to voicemail. Damn it, Victor. Her mind screamed to wait, but her heart, reckless, defiant, pushed her toward action. She slipped the note into her pocket, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the rain, the city's pulse a drumbeat of danger. The cab ride to the pier was a blur, the city's lights smearing into streaks of neon and shadow. The driver's eyes flicked to her in the rearview mirror, his voice gruff. That's a bad part of town, miss. You sure? Sophia nodded, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. I'm sure. The pier loomed ahead, the Hudson River lapping darkly against the pilings, the air heavy with salt and menace. The rain had stopped, leaving a damp chill that seeped into her bones, the air thick with the scent of diesel and decay. She stepped from the mom, her boots crunching on wet gravel, the silence oppressive, broken only by the river's restless rhythm and the flicker of a single street lamp. The pier was desolate, its shadows pulsing with threat. Sophia clutched the note, her pulse racing, her eyes scanning the darkness. Footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate, and a figure emerged. A woman, tall, her face sharp in the dim light, her eyes cold as the river. Sophia Grant, she said, her voice smooth but edged with venom. You don't learn, do you? Sophia's throat tightened, her hand tightening on the note. Valentina, you're supposed to be gone. Valentina's smile was a slash of cruelty. You think Marco was the end? The syndicate doesn't stop. Victor's empire is crumbling, and you're the crack they'll pry open. Sophia's blood ran cold, but she stood her ground, her voice fierce. You won't touch him. Not through me. Valentina stepped closer, her heels clicking on the wet wood. You're brave, I'll give you that. But bravery won't save you or him. Hand over the drive, or you both burn. Before Sophia could respond, headlights flared, cutting through the mist like a blade. A black SUV screeched to a stop, and Victor leapt out, his face a mask of fury and fear, his gun drawn. Sophia, he shouted, his voice raw, placing himself between her and Valentina. Get back! Valentina's smile didn't waver. Predictable, Russo. She's your Achilles heel. Victor's grip tightened on the gun, his voice lethal. Leave her out of this, Valentina. This is between us. Sophia's heart pounded, her mind reeling. Valentina, a ghost from Victor's past, a woman whose vengeance burned brighter than his empire. What does she want? Sophia demanded, her voice trembling but defiant. Valentina's gaze flicked to her, cold and assessing, to remind him what he lost. Walk away, Sophia, or you'll be his ruin. Victor fired a warning shot into the air, the sound shattering the night. Valentina didn't flinch, but her men, shadows in the mist, drew back. This isn't over, she said, turning and vanishing into the dark, her heels fading into the night. Victor pulled Sophia to him, his breath ragged, his hands checking her for wounds. Why the hell did you come here? He demanded, his voice breaking. I told you to stay safe. I got a text, she said, showing him the message, her hands shaking. I couldn't let you face this alone, Victor. Not after the factory. He cursed, his eyes dark with guilt. Valentina, she's playing us both. I thought she was out of the game. What did you do to her? Sophia asked, her voice sharp, searching his face. He looked away, pain flickering in his eyes. I loved her once, then I chose power over her. She's never forgiven me. Sophia's chest tightened, jealousy and fear twisting within her. And now she's using me to hurt you. You're my heart, he said, his voice raw, cupping her face. And she knows it. They drove to his penthouse, the city a blur of light and shadow. Inside, the glass walls offered no warmth, only a stark view of a city that felt hostile. Victor poured her a drink, his hands steady but his eyes haunted. I should have told you about Valentina, he said. She was my world until I built this one. I thought she was gone. Sophia sipped the wine, her hands trembling. And now she's back, because of me. No, he said fiercely, kneeling before her. Because of me. I let my guard down and now she's using you to get to me. She searched his eyes, seeing the guilt beneath his strength. What did you do to her, Victor? He looked away, his jaw tight. I made choices, choices that broke her, and now she's making me pay. The confession hung between them, heavy as the city's skyline. Sophia wanted to ask more, to unravel his past, but the weight of the night was too much. She set the glass down, her voice trembling. I can't keep living like this, Victor. Every day it's a new threat, a new shadow. He took her hands, his grip firm but gentle. I know, and I'll end it, even if it means facing her myself. Her heart pounded, torn between love and fear. And what if you can't stop her? His eyes met hers, fierce and unwavering. Then I'll die trying. That night, Sophia lay in the guest room, the city's lights painting restless patterns on the ceiling. She thought of Valentina's cold smile, Victor's blood-streaked face, the text that had lured her to the pier. She loved him. God help her, she did. But loving him meant living in a world where every knock was danger, every shadow a threat. The next morning, she returned to the diner, her resolve fraying but unbroken. The day passed in a haze of orders and whispers, customers eyeing her with curiosity and fear. By dusk, as she wiped down the counter, the bell chimed and a new figure entered. A man, older, his suit impeccable, his eyes sharp as a blade. He didn't sit, didn't order. He approached the counter, his voice low and precise. Sophia Grant, he said, sliding a sealed envelope across the counter. For Russo, make sure he gets it. Her blood ran cold. She glanced at the door, but the man was gone before she could speak. The envelope lay heavy in her hands, unmarked but ominous. She clutched it, her heart pounding, knowing that whatever it held would pull her deeper into Victor's world, a world of blood and promises where love was both her salvation and her sentence. The rain came again, a soft whisper against the bookstore's windows. Each droplet a quiet threat that mirrored the note burning a hole in Lily Harper's pocket. Stay away from Russo. She stood behind the counter, her fingers tracing the worn edges of a leather-bound novel, the scent of aged paper mingling with the damp musk of rain-soaked coats from customers hurrying in and out. The umbrella, Victor's umbrella, leaned against her locker in the back, its black canopy folded like a secret she couldn't shake. Its weight felt heavier now, not just from the rain it had shielded her from, but from the man it belonged to, his dark eyes and scarred jaw haunting her thoughts. The city outside pulsed with life, its neon signs flickering through the mist, casting fractured light across the shelves. Lily's heart raced, caught between the warmth of Victor's voice, "You're the only real thing in my world," and the cold dread of the note's warning. The bookstore, once her sanctuary, felt like a stage where shadows watched her every move. Victor hadn't called since their last dinner, 2 nights ago, when his lips had brushed hers under the awning of a hidden jazz club, the rain drumming a rhythm that matched her pulse. His absence gnawed at her, a void filled only by the memory of his touch, his low laugh, the way his hand steadied hers under the umbrella's shelter. She tried texting him, but his replies were curt, busy, stay safe. The brevity chilled her, a stark contrast to the fire in his eyes when he'd vowed to fight for her. The note, slipped under her apartment door in the dead of night, was a blade in her thoughts, its words sharp and unforgiving. Who had sent it, and how did they know where she lived? The questions swirled, unanswered, as the bookstore's bell chimed, pulling her from her reverie. A man entered, his trench coat dripping, his eyes hidden beneath a fedora's brim. He didn't browse, didn't speak, just stood by the door, his presence a weight in the air. Lily's pulse quickened, her hand slipping to the counter's edge, where a letter opener lay hidden. "Can I help you?" she called, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. He tilted his head, his eyes glinting like steel in the dim light. "You're Lily Harper," he said, his voice low, accented, a growl that sent a shiver down her spine. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you." Her throat tightened, her fingers brushing the letter opener. "I don't know what you're talking about." He stepped closer, the floor creaking under his weight, the scent of wet wool and cigarette smoke trailing him. "The umbrella and Russo. Walk away or you'll regret it." He slid a photograph across the counter, a grainy image of her and Victor, laughing under the umbrella outside the jazz club, oblivious to the camera's eye. Her blood ran cold. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp, her hand closing around the letter opener. He smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "A friend of the Moretti family. They don't like Russo's games. Or his new toy." He turned, his coat swirling, and vanished into the rain before she could respond. Lily's breath came in ragged gasps, the photograph trembling in her hands. The Moretti family, whispers of their name had reached her through the city's underbelly, a rival clan to Victor's empire, their power rooted in blood and betrayal. She stuffed the photo into her pocket, next to the note, and grabbed her phone, dialing Victor. Voicemail. Damn it, Victor. Her mind screamed to run, to hide, but her heart, reckless, defiant, pushed her toward action. She locked the bookstore, grabbed the umbrella, and stepped into the rain. The city's pulse a drumbeat of danger. The cab ride to Russo Towers was a blur, the city's lights smearing into streaks of neon and shadow. The driver's eyes flicked to her in the rearview mirror, his voice gruff. "That place ain't for tourists, miss. You sure?" Lily nodded, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. "I'm sure." The tower loomed ahead, its glass facade a monolith against the stormy sky, the air heavy with the scent of wet concrete and ozone. She stepped from the cab, her boots splashing in puddles, the umbrella's canopy shielding her as she crossed the street, its handle warm in her grip, a reminder of Victor's promise. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and light, chandeliers casting diamond patterns across the floor. The receptionist recognized her eyes widening slightly. "Miss Harper, he's on the 40th floor. He's expecting you." The elevator ride was a hum of anticipation, the city falling away below. The doors opened to Victor's penthouse, its glass walls framing a city that felt both beautiful and hostile. Victor stood by the window, his back to her, his silhouette sharp against the storm's gray veil. He turned, his dark eyes locking on hers, his face etched with worry. "Lily," he said, his voice low, resonant, crossing the room in 3 strides. "You shouldn't be here." She held up the photograph, her hand trembling. "The Moretti family. They're watching us, Victor. They sent this. And this." She pulled the note from her pocket, its words stark in the dim light. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkening as he read the note. "Damn it," he muttered, crumpling it. "I thought I had more time." "Time for what?" she demanded, stepping closer, the umbrella still in her hand, its weight a grounding force. "Who are the Morettis? And why do they want me to stay away?" He looked away, pain flickering in his eyes. "They're rivals, old enemies. They've wanted my empire for years, and now they see you as a way to get to me." Her chest tightened, fear and anger twisting within her. "So I'm a target because I love you?" His gaze snapped back to her, fierce and raw. "You love me?" The words hung between them, heavy as the rain outside. She swallowed, her voice trembling, but sure. "Yes, and I'm not running, Victor. Not from them. Not from you." He pulled her close, his breath ragged, his hands cupping her face. "You're braver than I deserve," he murmured, his lips brushing her forehead. "But this is my fight. I won't let them touch you." "It's our fight," she said, her voice fierce, gripping the umbrella like a talisman. "Tell me how to help." He hesitated, then nodded, his eyes resolute. "There's a ledger, hidden in my safe. It's got everything the Morettis want. Names, deals, proof that could destroy them. I was going to use it to end this, but they were moving faster than I thought." "Then let's get it," she said, her pulse racing. "Now." He led her to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a safe. As he entered the code, the lights flickered, and a loud thud echoed from the elevator shaft. Victor froze, his hand on his gun. "They're here," he whispered, his voice lethal. The penthouse door burst open and 3 men stormed in, their guns glinting in the dim light. The leader, tall, scarred, his eyes cold as the rain, smirked. "Russo, hand over the ledger or she dies." Lily's heart pounded, but she stood her ground, the umbrella raised like a shield. "You'll have to go through me," she said. "Ja, am." "I said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. Victor stepped in front of her, his gun trained on the leader. "Touch her, and you're dead, Carlo." Carlo laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the glass-walled room. You're soft, Russo. She's made you weak. Before Victor could respond, Lily acted, swinging the umbrella's heavy handle at Carlo's wrist, knocking his gun to the floor. It clattered and chaos erupted. Gunfire rang out, glass shattered, and Victor tackled Carlo, his fists a blur. Lily ducked behind a couch, her breath ragged, as Victor's men flooded in, their shouts mingling with the storm's roar outside. When the gunfire stopped, Victor was standing, blood streaking his face. Carlo and his men bound on the floor. He rushed to Lily, his hands checking her for wounds. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I'm fine," she said, clinging to him, the umbrella still in her hand, its canopy torn but intact. "Did we get them?" "For now," he said, his eyes haunted but resolute. "The ledger's safe, but the Morettis won't stop." They sat together, the city's lights painting restless patterns on the walls. Victor held her hand, his grip firm. "I don't deserve you, Lily, but I'll fight for you. Always." She leaned into him, her heart racing but steady. "We fight together," she said, her voice soft but fierce. As dawn broke, a new note slipped under the penthouse door. "You kept the ledger. We'll take her instead." Victor crumpled it, his eyes blazing. "Let them try," he said, pulling Lily close. The umbrella lay beside them, its torn canopy a silent promise of battles yet to come. The rain fell in relentless curtains, drumming against the city's skin like a warning knell, its rhythm echoing the frantic beat of Lily Harper's heart. She stood in Victor Russo's penthouse, clutching the torn umbrella, its black canopy scarred from the fight with Carlo, its handle a cold weight in her palm. The note, "You kept the ledger. We'll take her instead," lay crumpled on the glass table, its words a blade slicing through the fragile warmth of Victor's arms around her. The city sprawled below, its neon veins pulsing through the fog, their fractured light dancing across the penthouse's walls like restless ghosts. The air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked leather and Victor's cologne, sharp and cedar-laced, grounding her even as fear clawed her chest. The umbrella, once a shield, now felt like a beacon, drawing the Moretti family's gaze to her, marking her as the key to Victor's downfall. Victor stood by the window, his silhouette sharp against the storm's gray veil, his shoulders tense under his tailored suit. His dark eyes, usually so steady, flickered with a storm of their own, guilt, rage, and something softer, reserved only for her. "You should have stayed away, Lily," he said, his voice low, resonant, cutting through the rain's soft roar. "This world, it chews up the good." Lily's throat tightened, her fingers tightening on the umbrella's handle. "I'm not running, Victor. Not after last night." She stepped closer, her boots silent on the polished floor, the city's hum a distant pulse. "You said we fight together. So tell me everything." He turned, his scarred jaw catching the light, his gaze searching hers. "You're stubborn as hell," he said, a faint smile breaking through his worry. "All right, but you won't like it." He led her to a leather couch, the umbrella resting beside her like a silent sentinel. The ledger, he explained, was a record of every deal, every betrayal, every blood-soaked dollar that tied the Moretti family to half the city's underworld. "It's my leverage," Wendy said, his voice hard. "Proof they've been skimming from their own allies. If it gets out, they're done, but they'll kill to keep it buried." Lily's pulse raced, the weight of his words sinking in. "And they think I'm the way to get it?" His jaw clenched, his hand finding hers, his grip firm but warm. "They know you're my weakness, and they're not wrong." His thumb brushed her knuckles, a spark in the dark, but his eyes were haunted. "I've lost people before, Lily. I can't lose you." Her heart ached, torn between fear and the fire his touch ignited. "Then we end this," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Where's the ledger now?" "Safe," he said, his eyes flicking to the hidden panel on the wall. "But they're watching. Every move. We need to draw them out. On our terms." Before she could respond, a sharp crack echoed from the penthouse's entrance, like glass splintering under force. Victor's hands shot to his gun, his body shielding hers. "Stay down," he whispered, his voice lethal. The umbrella fell to the floor, its torn canopy splayed like a warning. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, echoed through the penthouse. A woman's voice, smooth and cold, cut through the silence. Victor Russo, hiding behind a girl now? A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, her dark hair pulled tight, her eyes glinting like steel in the dim light. She wore a tailored coat, rain-slicked, and a smirk that promised pain. You've gone soft. Victor's grip tightened on his gun, his voice a growl. Elena, stay out of this. Lily's breath caught. Elena, Victor's sister, the one he'd mentioned only in passing, her name laced with pain. But this woman wasn't here to help. Her gaze flicked to Lily, assessing. Predatory. So this is her, Elena said, her voice dripping with disdain. The one who's got you risking everything. Lily stood, her heart pounding, the umbrella at her feet. What do you want, Elena? She asked, her voice sharp, defiant. Elena's smile was a slash of cruelty. The ledger! Hand it over or the Morettis get her first. She pulled a knife, its blade catching the neon light, and stepped closer, her heels clicking on the floor. Victor moved, his gun trained on his sister, his voice breaking. You're with them? After everything? Elena's eyes flickered, a shadow of pain crossing her face. You chose power over family, Victor. I chose survival. She lunged, the knife flashing, but Victor was faster, tackling her to the ground, the blade skittering across the floor. Lily grabbed the umbrella, its handle heavy in her grip, and swung it at Elena's arm, knocking her back. Stay down, she shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. Elena cursed, scrambling to her feet, but Victor's men burst in, their guns drawn, pinning her against the wall. Victor stood, his breath ragged, his eyes locked on his sister. Why, Elena, he demanded, his voice raw. You were out. You were safe. She laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the glass-walled room. Safe? You think the Morettis let anyone go? They own me, Victor, just like they'll own her. Her gaze flicked to Lily, a warning in her eyes. Victor's men bound Elena, her struggles fading as they dragged her away. He turned to Lily, his face blood-streaked, his hands shaking as he pulled her close. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice breaking. I didn't know she'd turned. Lily clung to him, the umbrella between them, its torn fabric a reminder of their fight. What do we do now? She asked, her voice trembling, but resolute. We move the ledger, he said, his eyes fierce. Tonight, before they come for you again. They slipped out of the penthouse, the city a maze of rain and shadows. Victor's safe house was a nondescript loft in Brooklyn, its windows boarded, the air heavy with dust and secrecy. Inside, he opened a hidden safe, revealing the ledger, a slim, leather-bound book, its pages heavy with the city's sins. Lily's fingers brushed its cover, her heart racing. This ends it? She asked. It could, he said, his voice low. Or it ends us. As they planned their next move, a loud crash shattered the silence, a window exploding inward, glass raining down like jagged stars. Men in black poured in, their guns glinting, their leader a shadowed figure with a voice like gravel. The ledger, Russo! Now! Victor pushed Lily behind him, his gun raised, but the leader laughed, stepping into the light. It was Carlo, his wrist bandaged from Lily's strike, his eyes blazing with vengeance. You thought you'd win? He snarled. Give it up or she bleeds. Lily's heart pounded, but she gripped the umbrella, its handle a lifeline. She whispered to Victor, the ledger, use it as bait. He nodded, his eyes never leaving Carlo. You want it? He said, holding up the book. Come get it. Carlo lunged, but Lily acted, hurling the umbrella at his legs, tripping him. Victor fired, a single shot grazing Carlo's shoulder, and his men scattered, chaos erupting in the loft. Victor's team flooded in, gunfire echoing, the air thick with smoke and the tang of blood. When the dust settled, Carlo was gone, his men subdued, the ledger still in Victor's hands. He pulled Lily close, his breath ragged. You're insane, he said, a smile breaking through his fear. And I love you for it. She laughed, shaky but real, the umbrella at her feet, its canopy torn but unbroken. We're not done yet, are we? No, he said, his eyes dark with resolve, but we're closer. They returned to the penthouse at dawn, the city's skyline painted in blood and gold. The ledger was safe, but as Lily looked out at the city, a new note slipped under the door. You kept her alive. Big mistake. Victor crumpled it, his hand finding hers, his grip a promise. The umbrella lay beside them, its scars a testament to their fight. its shadow whispering of battles yet to come. The city's heartbeat pulsed through the rain-slicked streets, its neon glow fractured in puddles like shattered promises. Lily Harper stood in the dim alley behind the bookstore, clutching the torn umbrella, its black canopy trembling in the wind, a scarred relic of battles fought and dangers yet to come. The note, "You kept her alive." Big mistake. Burned in her pocket, its words a cold blade against her spine. The air was heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and distant smoke, the kind that lingered after a fire refused to die. The alley's walls loomed close, their graffiti faded but sharp, like the city's own scars. Lily's breath caught, her eyes scanning the shadows for movement, her fingers tight on the umbrella's handle, its weight no longer just a shield, but a chain tying her to Victor Russo's world. His vow, "We fight together," echoed in her mind, a fragile thread holding her to him, even as the Moretti family's threats tightened their grip. Victor had insisted she stay at his safe house after the attack, but Lily refused, her stubbornness a fire he couldn't quench. "I'm not hiding," she'd told him, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. His dark eyes had searched hers, torn between pride and dread, before he relented, promising to meet her at the bookstore after her shift. But hours had passed and Victor hadn't come. His phone silent, his absence a void that gnawed at her. The ledger, that leather-bound book of sins, was safe for now, but its secrets were a beacon, drawing the Morettis closer. The city whispered of their hunt, its streets alive with rumors. Russo's girl is marked. The Morettis are closing in. Lily's life was no longer her own, tethered to Victor's empire of blood and shadows, and the thought of losing him was a pain sharper than any knife. The bookstore's back door creaked as she slipped inside. The familiar scent of old paper and ink, a fleeting comfort. The umbrella rested against her locker, its torn fabric catching the dim light like a warning. She checked her phone, no messages, no calls. Her heart pounded, her mind racing with images of Victor bloodied, trapped, or worse. She dialed his number again, her breath hitching when it went straight to voicemail. "Where are you, Victor?" The note's threat echoed and her resolve hardened. She couldn't wait, couldn't hide. If the Morettis were coming for her, she'd face them head on. The city's pulse quickened as she stepped back into the alley, the umbrella in hand, its handle warm from her grip. The rain had stopped, leaving a damp chill that seeped into her bones, the air thick with the tang of metal and decay. She hailed a cab, her voice firm as she gave the driver an address Victor had mentioned once, a warehouse on the Lower East Side, a place he'd called neutral ground. The driver's eyes flicked to her in the rearview mirror, his voice gruff. "That's a rough spot, miss. You sure?" Lily nodded, her heart racing. "I'm sure." The warehouse loomed like a rusted giant, its broken windows glinting under the streetlights, the air heavy with oil and dust. Lily stepped from the cab, her boots crunching on gravel, the umbrella raised like a shield against the night's menace. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of the city and the faint drip of water from a leaking pipe. She pushed open the warehouse door, its creak echoing like a scream in the quiet. Inside, the air was thick with rust and shadows, the machinery looming like ghosts under a single flickering bulb. "Victor!" she called, her voice bouncing off the walls, swallowed by the vast emptiness. No answer came, only the faint clank of metal and the thud of her own heartbeat. Her fingers tightened on the umbrella, its torn canopy a reminder of her defiance. She moved deeper, her eyes scanning the dark, when footsteps, heavy, deliberate, sounded behind her. "Lily Harper," a voice said, low and sharp, like a blade drawn from its sheath. She turned, her breath catching. A man stood in the shadows, his face half lit, a scar running from his ear to his jaw. He was older, his suit pristine despite the warehouse's grime, his eyes cold and calculating. "You're a brave one," he said, stepping closer, a gun glinting in his hand. "Or foolish." Her heart pounded, but she stood her ground, the umbrella raised. "Where's Victor?" she demanded, her voice fierce despite the fear clawing her chest. The man, Luciano she'd later learn, laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the empty warehouse. "Russo's busy, but you're here, with me." Two more men emerged from the shadows, their guns trained on her, their faces hard with intent. "Hand over the ledger or you don't leave this place." "I don't have it," she said, her voice steady, her mind racing. The umbrella's handle was heavy, a weapon if she needed it. Let me go, or you'll regret it. Luciano's smile widened, cruel and cold. You think you can scare me? You're nothing without Russo. He stepped closer, his gun raised, but Lily was faster. She swung the umbrella, its handle cracking against his wrist, sending his gun skittering across the concrete. He cursed, stumbling back, and Lily ran, darting behind a rusted machine, her breath ragged as gunfire erupted, bullets ricocheting off steel. The warehouse became a maze of shadows and noise, Lily's heart pounding as she ducked and weaved, the men's shouts echoing behind her. She needed to find Victor, needed to survive, but the warehouse was a labyrinth, its corridors twisting into darkness. A hand grabbed her arm, yanking her back, and she screamed, swinging the umbrella wildly. Luciano's face loomed, blood streaking his arm, his eyes blazing with rage. "You'll pay for that," he snarled, his gun pressed to her chest. A shot rang out, sharp and deafening, not from Luciano but from the darkness. He fell, blood pooling on the concrete, his gun clattering. A woman emerged, her face pale but fierce, a gun in her trembling hands. "Lily!" she shouted, running to her, her eyes scanning for wounds. It was Elena, Victor's sister, her betrayal now a question mark in Lily's mind. "Elena?" Lily gasped, her voice shaking. "You're with them?" "Not anymore," Elena said, her voice raw. "I couldn't let them win." Before Lily could respond, headlights flared, cutting through the warehouse's gloom. A black SUV screeched inside, and Victor leapt out, his face bloodied but fierce, his gun drawn. "Lily!" he shouted, rushing to her, his hands checking her for wounds. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she said, clinging to him, the umbrella at her feet, its torn canopy a testament to her fight. "Elena, she saved me." Victor's eyes flicked to his sister, pain and gratitude warring in his gaze. "Why, Elena?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I owed you," she said, her voice soft but firm. "For everything." The warehouse fell silent, the air heavy with blood and relief. Victor pulled Lily close, his breath ragged. "I told you to stay safe," he said, his voice a mix of anger and love. "I couldn't," she said, her voice trembling but defiant. "I love you, Victor. I'm in this." He kissed her, fierce and desperate, the city's pulse a distant hum. "Then we end it," he said, his eyes resolute. Together. They left the warehouse, the dawn painting the sky in blood and gold. In Victor's penthouse, they burned a decoy ledger, keeping the real one hidden. But as Lily looked out at the skyline, a new note slipped under the door. "You won this round. The war begins now." Victor crumpled it, his hand finding hers, his grip a vow. The umbrella lay beside them, its scars a silent promise of battles yet to come. The city's pulse thrummed beneath a sky bruised with clouds, its neon veins flickering through the cracked windows of Victor Russo's safe house like a heartbeat on the verge of breaking. Lily Harper stood in the dim loft, clutching the torn umbrella, its black canopy a tattered shield against the storm that never seemed to end. The note, "You won this round. The war begins now," lay crumpled on the table, its words a noose tightening around her heart. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and old wood, laced with the faint tang of gunpowder from the warehouse fight. The city outside roared, its sirens in distant horns a restless chorus, their echoes bouncing off the loft's boarded walls like warnings she couldn't ignore. The umbrella's handle, scarred and warm in her grip, was a reminder of every battle fought, every moment she'd chosen Victor over safety. His vow, "We fight together," burned in her mind, a flame that warmed her even as fear clawed her chest. Victor hadn't slept, his dark eyes bloodshot, his scarred jaw tight as he pored over maps and burner phones spread across the table. Elena, his sister, sat nearby, her hands trembling as she cleaned a gun, her redemption fragile after her betrayal. The ledger, that leather-bound book of secrets, was hidden again, its location known only to Victor, but its weight pressed on them all. The Moretti family's hunt had intensified, their whispers crawling through the city's underbelly. Russo's empire is cracking. His girl is the key. Lily's life was no longer hers, tethered to Victor's world of blood and shadows, and the thought of losing him was a pain sharper than any blade. Lily's fingers brushed the umbrella's torn fabric, her voice breaking the silence. "We can't keep running, Victor," she said, her tone steady despite the tremor in her chest. "They'll find us. The ledger. It's time to use it." Victor looked up, his eyes locking on hers, a storm of guilt and resolve swirling within them. "It's not that simple," he said, his voice low, resonant, cutting through the loft's oppressive quiet. "If we leak the ledger, it destroys the Morettis, but it could take me down too. Everything I've built." Lily stepped closer, the umbrella in hand, its weight grounding her. "Then we don't leak it. We use it as bait. Draw them out. End this on our terms." Elena's head snapped up, her voice sharp. "She's right, Victor. They're not stopping. Not after Luciano." Her eyes flicked to Lily, a mix of respect and wariness. "She's braver than you deserve." Victor's jaw tightened, but he nodded, his hand finding Lily's, his grip warm and firm. "All right," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We set a trap, but you stay safe, Lily. No arguments." She shook her head, her eyes fierce. "I'm in this, Victor. All the way." Before he could protest, a sharp crack echoed from the street below, like glass shattering under force. Victor's hand shot to his gun, his body shielding Lily's. "Stay here," he whispered, his voice lethal. Elena grabbed her gun, her face pale but determined. The umbrella fell to the floor, its torn canopy splayed like a warning. Footsteps, quick, heavy, thudded up the stairs. The door burst open and a woman stepped in, her dark hair pulled tight, her eyes cold as the rain-soaked city. It was Valentina, a ghost from Victor's past, her presence ablaze in the room's tense air. She wore a tailored coat, her heels clicking on the wooden floor, a gun glinting in her hand. "Victor Russo," she said, her voice smooth but edged with venom. "You thought you could hide?" Lily's heart pounded, her hand reaching for the umbrella, its handle a lifeline. "Valentina," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. "What do you want?" Valentina's smile was a slash of cruelty. "The ledger. And you, little bird, you're the bait that'll break him." Her gaze flicked to Victor, a shadow of pain crossing her face. "You chose her over everything, didn't you?" Victor's grip tightened on his gun, his voice a growl. "Leave her out of this, Valentina. This is between us." Valentina laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the loft. "It's always been about you, Victor. Your empire, your choices, your betrayals." She stepped closer, her gun trained on Lily. "Hand over the ledger, or she dies." Lily's pulse raced, but she stood her ground, the umbrella raised like a shield. "You'll have to go through me," she said, her voice fierce, her mind racing for a way out. Elena moved, her gun aimed at Valentina, her voice trembling, but resolute. "Back off, or I shoot." Valentina's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, the windows shattered, glass raining down like jagged stars. Men in black poured in, their guns glinting. Their leader, Carlo, his shoulder bandaged from Lily's earlier strike, snarling orders. "Take them all," he shouted, his voice a roar in the chaos. The loft erupted, gunfire cracking like thunder, bullets ricocheting off walls. Victor pushed Lily behind a crate, his body shielding hers, his gun firing with deadly precision. Elena dove for cover, her shot steady, her face a mask of determination. Lily gripped the umbrella, its handle heavy, and swung it at a man lunging toward her, the metal cracking against his knee. He fell, cursing, and Lily scrambled to Victor's side, her breath ragged. "We need to get out," she shouted, her voice barely audible over the gunfire. Victor nodded, his eyes blazing. "The ledger. Grab it." He pointed to a hidden panel in the floor where the book was stashed. Lily crawled, her hands shaking as she pried it open. The leather-bound ledger heavy in her arms. A bullet grazed her shoulder, pain searing through her. But she clutched the book, refusing to let go. Valentina's voice cut through the chaos. "You can't run forever, Victor." She fired, her bullet narrowly missing Lily, who ducked behind the crate, the umbrella falling beside her arm, its torn canopy catching the flickering light. Victor grabbed Lily, pulling her toward a back exit, Elena covering them. "Go!" Elena shouted, her gun blazing. "I'll hold them off." They stumbled into the alley, the rain returning, its cold bite soaking Lily's skin. Victor's arm was around her, his breath ragged, blood streaking his face from a cut above his eye. "You're hurt," he said, his voice breaking as he saw her shoulder. I'm fine, she lied, clutching the ledger, the umbrella dragging behind her, its frame bent but unbroken. We need to keep moving. They ran through the city's labyrinth, the rain blurring the neon lights into streaks of fire and shadow. Victor led her to a hidden garage where a black SUV waited. Inside, he bandaged her shoulder, his hands trembling, his eyes haunted. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice raw. I dragged you into this. She cupped his face, her fingers wet with rain and blood. I chose this, Victor. I chose you. He kissed her, fierce and desperate, the ledger between them, the umbrella at their feet. We end this, he said, his voice resolute. Tonight. They drove to a pier, the Hudson River lapping darkly against the pilings, the air thick with salt and menace. Victor had a plan. Hand the ledger to a contact, a neutral party who could leak it to the Moretti's enemies. But as they stepped onto the pier, headlights flared, and Valentina's voice echoed, cold and sharp. You're predictable, Russo. She stood at the pier's edge, Carlo beside her, their men fanning out, guns drawn. Lily's heart pounded, but she held the ledger tight, the umbrella in her other hand, its weight a reminder of her fight. You want it? She shouted, her voice defiant. Come get it. Valentina's smile faltered, but before she could move, Elena appeared, her gun trained on Carlo. It's over, she said, her voice steady. Walk away, or you all burn. The standoff held, the air crackling with tension, the rain's rhythm a drumbeat of fate. Victor stepped forward, the ledger in his hand. Take it, he said, tossing it to Valentina. But know this, it's already copied. You touch her, and it goes to every family in the city. Valentina's eyes widened, her hand catching the ledger, her face a mask of rage and fear. She turned, her men following, disappearing into the rain. Carlo lingered, his eyes burning into Lily's. This isn't over, he said, vanishing into the shadows. Victor pulled Lily close, his breath ragged, his hands checking her wound. You're insane, he said, a smile breaking through his fear. And I love you for it. She laughed, shaky but real, the umbrella at her feet, its torn canopy a testament to their survival. We did it, she said, her voice trembling but triumphant. For now, he said, his eyes dark with resolve. But they'll come back. They returned to the penthouse, the city's skyline painted in blood and gold. As they sat together, the umbrella beside them, a new note slipped under the door. You gave us the ledger. But we still want her. Victor crumpled it, his hand finding hers, his grip a vow. The umbrella's shadow stretched across the floor, a silent promise of battles yet to come. The city's pulse thrummed beneath a sky choked with storm clouds, its neon veins flickering like a faltering heartbeat through the fogged windows of Victor Russo's penthouse. Lily Harper stood by the glass wall, clutching the torn umbrella, its black canopy scarred and frayed, a relic of battles fought and promises kept. The note, you gave us the ledger, but we still want her, lay crumpled on the floor, its words a cold blade slicing through the fragile warmth of Victor's hand in hers. The air was heavy with the scent of rain-soaked leather and the faint metallic tang of blood, a reminder of the warehouse fight that had nearly claimed them. The city outside roared, its sirens and distant horns weaving a restless symphony, their echoes bouncing off the penthouse's sleek walls like ghosts of their past. The umbrella's handle, warm and heavy in her grip, was a tether to Victor, to the love that had pulled her into his world of blood and shadows. His vow, we end this, burned in her heart, a flame that warmed her even as fear clawed her chest. Victor stood across the room, his dark eyes bloodshot, his scarred jaw tight as he checked his gun, his movements precise but heavy with exhaustion. Elena sat nearby, her hands steady as she loaded a clip, her redemption a fragile bridge between her and Victor. The ledger was gone, handed to Valentina as bait, but Victor had kept a copy, its secrets now a weapon to end the Moretti family's reign. The city whispered of their final stand. Russo's making a move. His girl's the key. Lily's life was no longer her own, bound to Victor's empire, and the thought of losing him was a pain sharper than any knife. Lily's fingers brushed the umbrella's torn fabric, her voice breaking the silence. We can't wait for them to come, Victor, she said, her tone steady despite the tremor in her chest. We need to strike first. End this war. Victor looked up, his eyes locking on hers, a storm of guilt and love swirling within them. You've done enough, Lily, he said, his voice low, resonant, cutting through the penthouse's oppressive quiet. This is my fight. I won't lose you. She stepped closer, the umbrella in hand, its weight grounding her. It's our fight, she said, her eyes fierce. I'm not the girl who ran from the rain anymore. I'm with you, Victor. All the way. Elena's head snapped up, her voice sharp but warm. She's right, Victor. The Morettis won't stop until they're broken, and she's stronger than you think. Victor's jaw tightened, but he nodded, his hand finding Lily's, his grip warm and firm. All right, he said, his voice rough with emotion. We hit them where they live, their stronghold, Pier 17, tonight. Before Lily could respond, a sharp crack echoed from the penthouse's entrance, like glass splintering under force. Victor's hand shot to his gun, his body shielding Lily's. Stay back, he whispered, his voice lethal. Elena grabbed her gun, her face pale but resolute. The umbrella fell to the floor, its torn canopy splayed like a warning. The door burst open and Valentina stepped in, her dark hair pulled tight, her eyes cold as the rain-soaked city. She wore a tailored coat, her heels clicking on the polished floor, a gun glinting in her hand. Behind her stood Carlo, his shoulder bandaged, his face a mask of vengeance, and a dozen men, their guns trained on the room. Victor Russo, Valentina said, her voice smooth but edged with venom. You thought a fake ledger would stop us? Lily's heart pounded, her hand reaching for the umbrella, its handle a lifeline. You're too late, she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. The real ledger's already out. Your empire's crumbling. Valentina's smile was a slash of cruelty. Then we'll take you instead, little bird. She stepped closer, her gun trained on Lily. You broke him, Victor, and now I'll break you. Victor's grip tightened on his gun, his voice a growl. Touch her, and you're dead, Valentina. Elena moved, her gun aimed at Carlo, her voice trembling but fierce. Back off, or I shoot. The room crackled with tension, the air thick with the scent of gunpowder and rain. Before anyone could fire, the windows shattered, glass raining down like jagged stars. Moretti's men poured in, their shouts echoing, bullets flying like hail. Victor pushed Lily behind a couch, his body shielding hers, his gun blazing. Elena dove for cover, her shot steady, her face a mask of defiance. Lily gripped the umbrella, its handle heavy, and swung it at a man lunging toward her, the metal cracking against his arm. He fell, cursing, and Lily scrambled to Victor's side, her breath ragged. We need to get out, she shouted, her voice barely audible over the gunfire. Victor nodded, his eyes blazing. The roof, there's a chopper. He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward a hidden stairwell, Elena covering their retreat. The penthouse became a battlefield, glass and blood painting the floor. The city's pulse, a distant roar. They reached the roof, the rain lashing down, the chopper's blades a faint hum in the storm. Valentina's voice cut through the cage, sharp and desperate. You can't run, Victor. She stood at the stairwell's edge, her gun raised, Carlo beside her, his eyes burning with rage. Lily's heart pounded, but she stood her ground, the umbrella raised like a shield. It's over, Valentina, she shouted, her voice fierce. The ledger's gone, sent to every family in the city. You're done. Valentina's face twisted, rage and pain warring in her eyes. You think you've won? She snarled, firing a shot that grazed Lily's arm, pain searing through her. Victor roared, tackling Valentina, his fists a blur as Carlo lunged, his knife flashing. Elena fired, her bullet hitting Carlo's leg, sending him to the ground. Victor pinned Valentina, his gun to her head, his voice breaking. Why, Valentina? Why couldn't you let go? She laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the rain. Because you broke me first, she said, her eyes wet with tears and rain. And I loved you. Victor's hand trembled, but before he could respond, Elena pulled him back. Enough, she said, her voice soft but firm. She's done. Valentina's men retreated, dragging Carlo away, their empire crumbling as the ledger's secrets spread. The chopper's blades roared, and Victor pulled Lily inside, his hands checking her wound, his breath ragged. You're hurt, he said, his voice breaking as he bandaged her arm. I'm fine, she lied, clinging to him, the umbrella at her feet, its torn canopy a testament to their fight. We did it, Victor. It's over. He kissed her, fierce and desperate, the city's skyline a blur of blood and gold. For now, he said, his eyes dark with resolve, but the city never sleeps. They flew into the dawn, the chopper's hum a steady pulse against the storm's fading roar. Back in the penthouse, they sat together, the umbrella beside them, its scars a silent vow. The Morettis were broken, their empire shattered. But as Lily looked out at the city, a new note slipped under the door. The war is over, but the city never forgets. Victor crumpled it, his hand finding hers, his grip a promise. We'll face it, he said, his voice soft but fierce. Together. Lily smiled, her heart racing but steady, the umbrella's shadow stretching across the floor, a reminder of the battles they'd fought and the ones still to come.